The Russo-Ukrainian War cannot be understood without looking at the map of Europe. Ukraine is located in a position that makes it a bridge between east and west, to the west. It borders countries that are part of the European Union and NATO: Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. To the east, it shares a long border with Russia. This unique geography makes Ukraine one of the most strategically important countries in Europe. When you look at the political map, Ukraine is not just another country, it is a front line. Sees Ukraine as part of its sphere of influence. While Europe views Ukraine as a partner moving closer to the West, this clash of interests is the root cause of the conflict. In 2014, when Ukraine's government shifted toward Europe, Russia reacted strongly by annexing Crimea. That moment redrew the map and sent shockwaves across the continent. From that point onward, Ukraine was at the center of global politics. The map shows how close Kyiv, the capital, is to European allies, and how vulnerable Ukraine is because of its long eastern border with Russia. Every kilometer matters, and every region carries weight. For Russia, controlling Ukraine means pushing back Western influence. For the West, supporting Ukraine means protecting the idea of independence and democracy. When the full-scale invasion began in 2022, the map of Europe was once again at the center of attention. Countries across the continent rallied behind Ukraine. While Russia doubled down on its claims, this political map explains why the war is not just about territory, but about the future balance of power in Europe. The borders drawn on this map may look like simple lines, but they represent centuries of history, culture, and struggle. They also reveal why this war continues to define global headlines today. Crimea is one of the most important turning points in the Russo-Ukrainian War. If you look at the map, Crimea is a peninsula stretching into the Black Sea. For centuries, it has been of great strategic value because whoever controls Crimea controls naval routes and trade in the region. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea, and that event changed the map of Europe permanently. Before 2014, Crimea was recognized internationally as part of Ukraine. However, after political unrest in Kyiv and Ukraine's move toward closer ties with Europe, Russia acted quickly. On the map, Crimea connects directly to the Russian naval power in the Black Sea by annexing it. Russia not only gained Sevastopol, major naval base, but also secured a geographic advantage. This move was condemned by most of the world, but for Russia, it was a critical step to strengthen its position. The map also shows why Crimea is so contested. To Ukraine, it represents a violation of sovereignty and a painful loss of territory. To Russia, it represents a symbol of power and national pride. Since 2014, Crimea has been heavily militarized, and the Black Sea has become one of the most dangerous zones in the conflict. The annexation of Crimea set the stage for the larger war of 2022. By controlling this peninsula, Russia had the ability to launch attacks from the south, cutting Ukraine off from important coastal cities like Mariupol and Kherson. Maps of the invasion show arrows moving north from Crimea, proving just how critical this territory is. Crimea is not just a place on the map. It is the spark that lit a larger fire. Its annexation marked the beginning of open confrontation, and to this day, it remains one of the most controversial pieces of land in the world. On February 24, 2022, the world woke up to the largest European invasion since World War II. The map of Ukraine suddenly filled with red arrows, showing Russian forces pushing in from three directions: the north, the east, and the south. It was a moment that shocked not only Ukraine, but the entire globe. From the north, Russian troops moved through Belarus and aimed directly for Kyiv, the capital. On the map, the arrows show their path moving toward the heart of Ukraine. From the east, Russia pushed through Kharkiv and the Donbass region. From the south, soldiers poured out of Crimea, capturing coastal areas and threatening cities like Kherson and Mariupol. Within days, Ukraine's map looked as if it was being swallowed by a red wave. But the invasion was not as easy as Russia expected. Kyiv did not fall. Ukrainian defenders resisted fiercely, blocking Russian convoys and slowing down their advance. By April 2022, the map changed again, as Russian forces retreated from northern Ukraine, failing to capture the capital. This was a turning point that gave Ukraine new strength. The invasion map of 2022 tells a story of both aggression and resistance. It shows the rapid advances of Russia, but also the stubborn defense and counterattacks of Ukraine. Every arrow in shaded area represents thousands of soldiers, destroyed cities, and shifting front lines. Even today, the 2022 invasion map is studied by analysts to understand where the war began, where it turned, and where it may still go. It is not just a graphic, it is a snapshot of history in motion. The Donbas region in eastern Ukraine is at the very heart of the Russo-Ukrainian War. If you study the map, Donbas includes two major areas, Donetsk and Luhansk. This is the industrial heartland of Ukraine, rich in coal and factories. It is also directly connected to Russia through its long eastern border. In 2014, pro-Russian separatists declared independence in Donetsk and Luhansk. Russia supported them with weapons and fighters. The map of Ukraine suddenly showed areas outside Kyiv's control marked as self-proclaimed republics. This became the front line for years of fighting before the full-scale invasion. Donbas is not just about land, it's about identity. Many people here speak Russian and have cultural ties to Moscow. Russia used this as a reason to interfere, claiming to protect Russian speakers. Ukraine, however, insists that Donbas is an inseparable part of its territory. This clash makes the map of Donbas one of the most disputed in the world when the 2022 invasion began. The Donbas became the main focus of the war. On the map, battles raged over cities like Bakhmut, Severodonetsk, and Lysychansk. Ukraine and Russia fought block by block, kilometer by kilometer. The Donbas map kept changing, with territory gained and lost repeatedly. Today, much of the fighting still takes place here. The Donbas map shows trenches, artillery zones, and destroyed towns. It is a symbol of the war's brutality and a key to understanding why peace is so difficult to achieve. Whoever controls Donbas controls the future of eastern Ukraine. In the early days of the 2022 invasion, Russia believed it could capture Kyiv within days. On the map, arrows from Belarus pointed straight toward the Ukrainian capital. The plan was to decapitate Ukraine's government and replace it with a pro-Russian regime. But Kyiv became the war's greatest symbol of resistance. Kyiv is not just a city, it is the heart of Ukraine. Located in the north-central part of the country, it holds deep cultural, historical, and political importance. If Kyiv had fallen, the entire map of Ukraine would look different today. Russian forces moved rapidly, surrounding towns like Bucha, Irpin, and Hostomel. Satellite maps showed convoys stretching for miles, aiming to encircle the city, but Ukraine fought back. The defenders used every advantage or banned terrain, local knowledge, and Western support. The map of March 2022 shows Russian forces stalled, unable to break into the city. By April, Russia was forced to retreat, marking one of its biggest failures. The siege of Kyiv changed the course of the war. It proved that Ukraine could resist and that Russia's victory would not come easily. On the map, Kyiv remained free, standing as a bright blue point in a sea of red advances. This moment inspired the entire nation and reshaped global support. Kyiv under siege was not just a military battle. It was a fight for identity, sovereignty, and survival. The map of Ukraine still shows Kyiv at its center, strong and unbroken. Two cities tell the story of the southern front, Kherson and Mariupol. On the map, both are crucial for control of Ukraine's southern coastline. Kherson sits on the Dnipro River near the Black Sea, while Mariupol lies on the Sea of Azov. Together, they form a gateway to Ukraine's maritime strength. In March 2022, Kherson became the first major city to fall under Russian control. On the map, this gave Russia a direct connection to Crimea and the possibility of cutting Ukraine off from its ports. Mariupol, on the other hand, became a city of resistance. Surrounded and bombarded, It held out for months, with its last defenders hiding in the Azovstal steel plant. Maps of the siege show Mariupol completely encircled. With arrows pointing inward from all sides, the capture of Kherson allowed Russia to claim a symbolic victory, while the fall of Mariupol gave it control of a land bridge between Russia and Crimea. Yet Ukraine struck back. By November 2022, the map changed again when Ukrainian forces liberated Kherson, pushing Russian troops back across the Dnipro. These two cities represent both the tragedy and resilience of Ukraine. Kherson shows liberation is possible, while Mariupol shows the price of resistance. On the map, they will forever remain symbols of the war's most intense battles. The Kharkiv counteroffensive in September 2022 is one of Ukraine's greatest victories. On the map, Kharkiv is close to Russia's border, making it an easy target. Russia captured large areas around it early in the invasion, but Ukraine was planning a surprise. While Russia focused on the south, Ukraine launched a lightning strike in the east. On the map, blue arrows suddenly swept through the Kharkiv region, liberating towns and villages in just days. Russian forces, unprepared, retreated in chaos. Maps of the offensive showed territory changing hands almost overnight. This counteroffensive changed the psychology of the war. It showed that Russia could be defeated and Ukraine could regain lost land. Entire districts were retaken and Ukrainian flags returned to places that had been under occupation for months. Kharkiv city itself, always under threat, was secured. The Kharkiv map tells a story of speed and determination. It also showed the importance of strategy. By keeping Russia focused on Kherson in the south, Ukraine created an opportunity in the east. When the attack came, it changed everything. The Kharkiv counteroffensive is now studied worldwide as an example of modern warfare. The map of September 2022 proves that even in a larger war, mobility and surprise can turn the tide. Today, the war is defined by its front lines. If you look at a current map of southern Ukraine, you will see a jagged line stretching across Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. This is where the armies of Ukraine and Russia face each other every day. The front line is not just a line on paper. It is a zone of trenches, landmines, and constant artillery. Maps show red and blue areas clashing, with contested zones shaded in gray. Each kilometer gained or lost costs lives and resources. Cities like Tokmak and Melitopol become key points on the frontline map. The southern front is crucial because it connects directly to Crimea. If Ukraine can break through, it can cut off Russian supply lines and threaten the peninsula. If Russia holds, it can keep its land bridge strong. This is why the map of the south is updated daily, with arrows showing minor advances and retreats. Frontline map shows how modern war is often about endurance, not speed. Months of fighting can shift the line by only a few kilometers, yet every change is meaningful. The southern Ukraine frontline represents the heart of today's struggle. The Russo-Ukrainian War is not just local, it is global. A world map helps us understand the bigger picture. When you zoom out, you see NATO countries supplying Ukraine, Russia seeking allies, and the entire world reacting. On the map, NATO states like Poland, Lithuania, and Romania become critical supply routes. Weapons, aid, and refugees move through these borders. Meanwhile, Russia looks eastward, strengthening ties with China, Iran, and other partners. The global map of this war stretches far beyond Europe. This conflict also reshaped international energy routes. Pipelines, trade corridors, and shipping lines shifted. Maps of global trade show how Europe reduced its dependence on Russian gas and turned to other suppliers. The war has truly changed the world map of energy and politics. NATO's expansion is another key point. On the global map, countries like Finland and Sweden have moved closer to NATO directly because of the war. Russia's actions redrew not just Ukraine's map, but also Europe's security map. The global dimension of the war proves that this is more than a border conflict. It is a struggle for the future order of the world. Every line on the global map, from supply chains to alliances, tells us how deep the impact really is. When you look at the map of Ukraine today, it often appears divided into two colors: blue for Ukraine and red for Russia. This visual contrast captures the essence of the war, a clash of two nations, two identities, and two visions of the future. On one side, Ukraine fights to preserve its independence and reclaim its territory. On the map, its areas are highlighted in blue, symbolizing freedom and sovereignty. On the other side, Russia shades regions in red, claiming them as part of its control. These maps are not just information, they are propaganda tools used by both sides to tell their version of the story. The cinematic maps we see on news channels and documentaries show glowing borders, shifting front lines, and arrows of attack. They make the war understandable for viewers around the world. But behind every glowing red or blue zone are real people, real cities, and real consequences. This visual battle of maps is as powerful as the fighting on the ground. It shapes global opinion and influences politics. A cinematic war map makes people see the conflict not as distant, but as immediate and urgent. The Ukraine versus Russia map is more than a graphic hit, is a symbol of a struggle that will define history. As the lines shift, as colors expand or shrink, we witness a war that is still being written on the living map of Europe.